What is up, guys? Welcome to the 4th episode of Twink Revolution. I'm Sam.
I'm Gian.
How you doing, Gian?
And, pretty shit.
Yeah?
I'm sick.
No.
And then worse than that, I am the subject of directed state violence.
What is that?
I've been summoned for jury duty. And to serve on a jury in San Francisco is to be subjected to just a lot of waiting in very small rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and trapped with the dumbest fucking people you've ever met.
So I've never actually been required to do jury duty. I don't know if they actually pay you. What do they pay you?
I think it's like $20 a day or something. It would not probably buy you like lunch and a bus ticket to get to the court.
So a pay cut.
A little bit of one for me, yeah. It's been an object lesson in sort of if you want to build like centralized government bureaucracies that I personally do. I know you're a little more skeptical of them, but I'm a big fan of like, sort of big rig government programs that centralize a lot of stuff. But I feel like the court system is, for all its other drawbacks, right, is also just a good example of like a non-functional bureaucracy of exactly the type that California in general, but the U.S. just specializes it.
Yeah.
Like you can never have a good interaction with the government right here because that would be evidence perhaps that there could be a future in which maybe the government could take over some of the shit.
I mean, I feel like the whole court system kind of reaffirms all the problems with American society, like major class divides, mass incarceration, and also just like not offering worker rights. I mean, like you just said, $20 a day, and it's not a living wage compensation for many people who probably don't actually make that much money and have to divert time to being a juror.
Well, but for all these welfare queens, just a good hard day of labor, putting away, single black mothers in jail. That's just a good, honest day's work. Yeah. And, that's what these damned welfare queens need to get up and do some more of.
Well, speaking of locking up black people and the jury, just this last week, a 21-year-old Florida man was actually sentenced to 10 days in jail and over 150 hours of community service because he overslept for jury and didn't notify them that he overslept, which I think is a gross injustice. I mean,
there's a petty tyranny to it, but I also, for me, it takes on a particularly sort of sharp edge just because they're there, but for the grace of God go I. I'm notoriously bad at getting up in the morning. Yeah, and I give very few fucks about jury duty as civic duty. I think it's vastly overrated. Probably second only to voting in terms of sort of just completely overrated civic virtues.
Well, also the fact they sent police to this man's house, why was that necessary? I mean,
well, it's clearly a danger to society.
It's a clear danger. But this man was not a threat to society. He was taking care of his grandfather.
That fucker.
He's in Florida. I mean, he's not working a high-paying luxury job. But the fact they locked him up and sentenced him to this community service when he's clearly just a regular working-class man who overslept, it's just, I don't think that's the proper way to react to not following procedure.
No, I mean, judges have essentially unlimited power, right? That's the problem. They are sort of, there's some little kangaroo court, if you use the phrase.
Yeah.
Like they are not really held accountable directly. They don't have a boss per se, and as we know, bosses are good. Mm-hmm. To whom do I complain when I want to speak to their manager is my question.
Yeah.
Because you'll sort of see, and I will not comment on an active case because I'm fucking terrified of judges and their tyrannical little fiefdoms. And I'm happy to say the jury selection process rolls on for another few days, and I am subject to this. I must continue to participate enthusiastically. They can require that of me.
I mean, the fact we make being a juror a burden in society just shows how broad our whole judicial system is. I mean, this role is an actual important role in society. place of
Yeah.
fate into...
How we meant to jail single mothers, exactly.
Exactly.
Without the participation. But it is also horrifying just how long some of the cases can go. I just cannot imagine. If you, say, were in like a job where you were paid hourly, or where you maybe relied on tips, if you were driving a rideshare service or something, like how do you survive a 4-month trial? Like, what on earth can you do? There are sort of economic hardship conditions you can get out under, but they're incredibly narrowly defined. I think they were written in like the 70s. So it's like, oh, you earn more than $4 a day to support a family of 7. Like, oh, well, no, fuck you. You're not under economic hardship.
Yeah.
There's very little latitude even for the judges to grant hardship exemptions. It's hideous.
I mean, that's all I really have on that. I mean, we can kind of touch on the broader issues of the court, going to the Supreme Court and...
the best court.
Yeah.
Greatest court in the land. Doesn't it make you proud?
It makes me so proud.
It just feels it. Tears come to my eyes as I weep joyfully over the freedoms it grants us.
Yeah.
They've been busy, I hear, today.
I think it's fucking stupid, to be honest. And not for the reason people think, but I think it might have been you that posted earlier how we're utilizing courts to decide union
worker rights.
But also just the fact that the Democrats would rely on the courts to decide decisions for the LGBT community instead of actually just passing fucking laws.
Well, these morons basically thought that after Obama they were going to have 1,000-year lock on the presidency, right? And so all of that just felt like, too hard basket.
Yeah.
So now there's these 3 cases that have come up, right, of all kind of labor related.
Yeah, they're all labor related. So the first one is basically asking the question of whether or not sexual orientation is included in anti-discrimination law, which just only says sex.
Oh, yes, there's Title VII, is sex discrimination, which I'm into sex. Sex is fun. Discrimination, also fun.
So the argument is it's focused on sex because it's focused on the sexual partner's gender of who you're with. So that's the argument in that case. But the second one is also, does it cover transgender people? It was a woman who came out to her boss at a funeral parlor saying she's a transgender woman, and they fired her because she didn't fit the dress code because they still viewed her as her assigned gender at birth. Which
How
really
charming.
Yeah, which is disgusting.
Yeah, so and then I know, so we're not expecting any decisions until next year.
No.
But I thought what was interesting in the coverage of all this, right, was sort of hysterical shrieking from like the people who in 2016 were like, you Bernie fuckers better get on the Hillary train. She's the only hope to stop Trump and to stop this hideous, like the Supreme Court is all that matters. And I find myself here 4 years later having essentially the same fight, but with these rather grim headlines being like, well, Gorsuch, he furrowed his brow at the right moment during things, and Kavanaugh, cracked a beer at the right moment, and so they're starting to do sort of the usual criminology on the Supreme Court about like which way are they going to go.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
I just think this focus on the Supreme Court as our one savior is just ignoring the whole historical legacy of what this institution really is reaffirming, which is the establishment and capitalist interest. I mean, socialists back when the Red Scare was occurring literally called the Supreme Court out for being a capitalist enterprise. Like it provides an air of procedural legitimacy on top of the interests of the capitalist class in this country. That's all it's ever been for. Yeah, and it ignores the responsibility of like groups that supposedly care about minority and LGBT and working class interests, but they don't pass any laws. Instead, they wait on the courts to do it, and more often than not, it serves to disadvantage us. Right. They have accidentally
cause some expansions of sort of rights within a narrow rights framework, right? But it's not really their purpose, and they're pretty toothless. I mean, when a 9,000-year-old woman's pancreas is sort of getting children's picture books written about it as fan fiction, it is just a horrifying state of affairs, right? This is not how you guarantee rights. Rights are sort of a liberal stand-in for power and relations. And so, like, the best way to guarantee that you cannot be fired when you come out as a trans woman or because you are outed as gay against your will or whatever in the workplace is to have a motherfucking union. Like, and have it that through solidarity, right? That people do not allow you to be fired unilaterally. Take that power away from the bosses. Don't give it to the fucking Supreme Court.
No, because they're not going to serve your interests. These people are of the capitalist class. I mean, just to show you how similar they are when it really comes down to it, Ruth Bader Ginsburg congratulated Kavanaugh for having like an all-woman team. Like,
yes, his intern.
And this is a
staff
man
or
who was
whatever,
prosecuted or like was being on trial, not truly on trial, but like being
tried it in the court of public opinion unfairly, if you recall. Free Brent Kavanaugh.
Yeah, who basically Me Too'd about misconduct for alleged sexual assault. So it's just like this woman's paraded as a feminist icon, but when it comes down to it, she's going to reaffirm the establishment, and that doesn't matter what political party you're on, but instead of what class interest you serve.
Well, now I'm embarrassed about wearing my my notorious RBG crop top while we're recording this, but you're wearing a much better T-shirt, which is Gaza Fights For Freedom. It's very fetching. Yeah,
it's amazing. I got it this weekend. We went to the San Francisco premiere of Abby Martin and Mike Preisner's documentary, Gaza Fights For Freedom, and it's amazing.
It was great.
Yeah. It basically documents the Great March of Return, which is the Palestinians of Gaza returning to their homeland in a peaceful march, and the atrocities and war crimes committed by the Israeli Defense Forces. And I think it's extremely unique in this political climate to have a documentary like this, and honestly it's kind of disheartening to see how awful humans can be.
Yeah, it's it is a beautiful piece of cinema. Yeah, that's like, I think the first and foremost thing to say about it is just like I'm a fan of documentaries as a thing to watch, and so it's just really well made documentary.
Yeah,
and then. Aside from that, the subject matter, I think, is treated sensitively, intelligently. It's not a polemic. It kind of it's not trying to toe some sort of bullshit centrist line on this issue. It has a very clear point of view, but it also is. I think there was a Q&A afterwards with Abby Martin and Mike Preisner, and they kind of say like they chose the format they did because they wanted it as a to furnish people with the kinds of facts that they could take out into the world with them, right? About these, like, here is the number of people who have been killed by sniper fire, and you know, I think it was 183. I think look, it's working. I have fact recall off the top of my head. And the number of weapons that even the Israeli government alleges were at this march was zero. Right? There is not a single weapon was alleged to have ever been in this march.
And the United Nations reaffirms that in a report.
Yeah, so it's like they're careful, they're thorough, and then the other really cool part about it that I enjoyed was learning afterwards that they had worked, so they couldn't get into the country.
No, so they weren't allowed into Gaza when they were in Israel for their series Empire Files.
Yeah,
and basically they worked with a bunch of filmmakers in Gaza to get all this footage that none of the Western or global media was interested in displaying, and basically adopted or picked up this media and put it into this film, and not just offering them Gaza wages, but actually are working to get them Hollywood wages for their film, which is like unprecedented. Yeah,
so it was kind of the working with local cinematographers and camera people was really great, and the fact that they had the sort of the wherewithal to think a little bit about like how are we are we being ethical while we're constructing this film about this unethical occupation?
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it, and as I say, it is just a wonderful piece of documentary.
Yeah.
It's just that some of the footage they have is just stunning.
Yes.
Not a lot of gore or torture
No.
porn in it, which there clearly could be, but I think they shy away from all that. It is not so much a it's not quite as grueling as it could be.
It really humanizes the struggle of Palestinians.
It's wonderful. It's very informative, very well made. And you can watch it online at GazaFightsForFreedom.com.
Yes.
And I think there's links from the Empire Files on YouTube, right?
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, there's Empire Files, which is their series, and there's more free episodes on the rest of the Palestinian struggle in the West Bank primarily.
Cool. But yeah, they're touring the U.S. at the moment, various major cities, where they're doing this sort of Q&A format with the film, which is really great. Highly recommend it. It's very affordable. But also, if you just want to like pay a few bucks and watch the film and support it, highly recommend doing it online. It's really good. We'll put the links in the episode description here. Also,
Abby is super cool.
She is.
You have to meet her.
Got a great selfie. We got the Abby bump on Twitter as well. She retweeted our. Well, it was actually her selfie. She took the selfie for us.
She really just like slaughtered your attempt at a selfie.
My attempt at a selfie was blurry and awful.
She's an expert.
She's like, here, let me help, and kind of rather kindly took a much better selfie.
Yeah, it took like 5 seconds. She was like, you're already better, selfie game. Yeah.
No, I bow to the master on that one. It's really good.
Yeah. And then speaking of war crimes, we can talk about Ellen DeGeneres and the whole liberal talk show media.
I know. Did you see what she was wearing?
I know.
War
disgusting.
crime, am I right?
I mean, she has the new iPhone. I mean, how dare she? But no, really, she was found...
Hang with
George
W.
Yeah, George W. Bush at... I don't watch sports. What game was it
Cowboys
again?
game.
Cowboys versus Packers.
Football.
So, I mean, for one...
The one with the tight pants.
Oh,
Football.
okay.
Yeah.
Football.
Yeah.
I mean, soccer is hotter, but that's just my opinion.
This was, obviously, like, this has done a full media cycle now.
Yeah.
It was only interesting because, obviously, she was sort of snapped with her, looking very cozy next to George Bush in the private box as a Cowboys owner. And I think, there was a sort of split take on this, right? One was the people who are like, this all checks out, right? There's nothing, no new information in this picture. Then there was sort of the more kind of liberal take, or the rad lib end of like losing their fucking minds about like, how could Ellen, our cultural warrior, abandon us? Well, how could she do this to us? But usually over gay marriage support, not the war crimes, not the million dead Iraqis. Did not feature heavily in the first wave of criticism.
Well, did you see her take on it on her show today?
I did, and I got a bit vomity.
Yeah, so
might have been what made me sick. Actually,
yeah. So she basically was like, "How you must be all confused why a liberal gay woman is hanging out with a conservative Republican man." Basically says, "Oh, well, we're friends."
She said, "I'm friendly to everyone, whether I agree with them or not."
Exactly, but she kind of made it seem like, the discontent was over her being gay and his being kind of shit to gays. But the reality is, she totally ignored the reality that he's a war criminal. Like,
I think it was Bhaskar from Jacobin just replied to the original photo, just saying like, what is the not pictured 1 million dead Iraqis or something.
And it's really been this like liberal media like savior complex around George Bush because they hate Trump so much. But the fact is, Bush broke the Constitution too. None of his wars were Constitution or approved by Congress, which is in the Constitution. So if you're upset about that, you should be upset about people like Michelle Obama and Ellen DeGeneres making this war criminal seem like a big teddy bear that you should just love, and he loves America, unlike this Putin and stooge Trump. Like, it's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, and even, just to be very clear on where I fall on this one, even if those were legally rubber stamped by Congress, you could still be very vehemently anti-Iraq. I'm teasing.
Yeah, for the libs, it matters. So.
It does, right? It's the veil of legalism and of norms, and so the fact that Bush represents a a happier time when norms were,
Yeah.
just in place. And they just fucking love rehabilitating this man.
Yeah.
Please stop trying to rehabilitate him. You can just write him off. He was a shitty right-wing politician as president, and we know his legacy, right?
Yeah.
His legacy is the entire Middle East in flames. This is his personal doing that he railroaded through a spineless fucking Congress.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we need not eat nachos with the motherfucker.
No, you
it.
should be treating him like a pariah.
Yes.
Like all war criminals, and that includes the Democratic presidential candidate or presidents like Obama and Clinton. They are all war criminals. They all committed war crimes. It's not even like debatable. It's an actual fact.
No, it's sort of verifiable. We need not pretend
Yeah.
that we have to like these people. We don't need to be polite to them.
And the liberal establishment, even the ones who were critical of Bush, are just a complete brain meltdowns over the Trump winning. I mean, Rosie O'Donnell, who was a 9/11 truther and hardcore anti-Iraq war advocate when she was on The View, tweeted, "How comforting to see a real president. Never thought his image would move me so. Hashtag President Bush. Come on, Republicans. Call bullshit on Trump. Save democracy."
Oh,
know,
my
when you're
fucking God.
when you are so against an illegal war and then suddenly endorsing the person who founded the war. I mean, if you go on Rosie O'Donnell's Twitter, her whole thing's about impeaching Trump. Her brain's completely melted. Like, she has no sense of self, and she's still part of that capitalist class who's, like, more concerned about preserving the establishment order of capitalism and stuff. She never was a socialist or, like, a radical.
Right.
She just happened to be like, oh, this war is bad, but I'm still going to defend everything that makes this war happen.
Well, and this is what just blows me away about the current sort of impeachment discourse is that, going back to my living memory of politics, right? There was going back to Bill Clinton, there has been a compelling impeachment case against him at the time based on his use of cruise missiles against Sudan. Not for the blowjobs, right? Everyone likes to remember it was the using the cruise missiles in the office to distract from the blowjobs, and then the perjury was really what they chose to prosecute him on. Kind of weak sauce.
What a great person who destroyed the only pharmaceutical facility in the poor nation of Sudan.
Yes, it was, and really, as far as anyone can tell, right, for no military reasons, his Joint Chiefs did not think this was a good target. He lobbed them at it because he needed to pick a target. He seemed to have done it almost at random.
Yeah.
So there's him, right? That was a sort of an impeachment case that just got kind of flubbed. Then you had Bush, and I mean, to the extent that the main crime people leveled against him was the case that was made for Iraq was made fraudulently. The weapons of mass destruction claims were falsified within the White House.
And it's funny because the talk show establishments, including people like Oprah Winfrey, were actually supporting the Iraq war. You can watch, she actually had state agents on her show basically talking about the situation, a lot of which was founded on lies, and she supported the Iraq war, which makes it even more hilarious when libs were like, oh, President Oprah for, 2020. It's like, she'd be a war criminal, too. Like, all these people would be...
I mean, certainly if support for Iraq is disqualifying for Hillary, which it was and is, then it certainly... should be disqualifying for Oprah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, that case was never really seriously made. There were people who said impeach Bush, but it was kind of a byline, right? There was never serious congressional support for it. Obama, executed a U.S. citizen extrajudicially using a drone in Yemen.
Played out the execution or the removal of Gaddafi, which was one of the most prosperous African nations on the whole continent, and now they're having slave markets. That's wonderful.
So they sort of, I do like to lay that one at Hillary's feet, but only because I'm sexist.
But it was president. Yeah.
So
now we're racist and sexist.
Definitely, always. We're San Francisco gays, of course we are. So to the extent that the Trump hysteria, right, feels kind of unique, and the fact that everyone's just losing their fucking minds over this impeachment case is really tedious. Just given it does not take more than, say, 4 minutes of casual investigation into the history of the last presidents, right? Like, pick the last 4 presidents, read just a capsule summary of their presidency, and see if you can see the difference in kind here, which means this is such a unique threat to our proud democracy that has always been perfect and good.
They should honestly all be sent to The Hague for war crimes, but that's just my opinion.
Yes, well, well, I mean, speaking of war crimes, it's Fleet Week in San Francisco. Which, if you don't know what this is, it's really exciting. So San Francisco, the magical Golden Gate, right, the city on the bay, the Pacific Ocean looms beautifully out through the sunset. And what they do is they sail in a bunch of ships, the parade of ships, I believe it's called. They sail them into the bay and they park up, and you can go tour them. And then they bring out the Blue Angels air show stuff, and there's a bunch of United Airlines does loop-de-loops in a 737 or something. It's all very impressive, very loud. Sort of air show done right on top of the city, military air show done right on top of the city.
It's like a simulation of what it would sound to be in Iraq when the planes fly over to drop bombs, but we just don't have the bombs dropped. So
well, see, so I've always fallen down a little bit. So I do have a little bit of a sort of nerd boner about jet aircraft. Yeah, exactly. So I think this shit's kind of cool, and I understand that the argument is sincerely made by people like, hey, this is actually really kind of shitty and traumatizing. But once again, I'm a callous San Francisco gay, so the idea of re-traumatizing people is sort of just my usual day to day. But specifically, I like the Blue Angels. Yeah, I like the Blue Angels because it is the only set of military planes that you can guarantee are not being used to lob cluster munitions at children in the Middle East. So I think the entire military should be for air shows. I think that should be the only military. They can convert every single plane, and all they get to do is colored smoke and beautiful, aerial presentations to hard rock songs of yesteryear or whatever. That's that's what they do, and I think this is an amazing purpose for the military. I think it should be all it's for.
I mean, don't we all? But sadly, the reality is this pageantry is used to continue this legacy of love for our military unconditionally and American nationalism. I mean, in 1981, this whole ordeal was kind of created by Dianne Feinstein, the woman who hung up the Confederate flag in San Francisco, not once, twice. So it really shows.
It was pulled down, right, multiple times.
Yes.
I didn't know she was so instrumental in it. I mean, she took over from Harvey Milk. What a legacy to live up to. So putting up Confederate flags and just inviting the military to come and make San Francisco its sort of recruiting ground / fairground, basically, for a week out of every year.
There's also the ship tours, which I just learned about, actually.
We're gonna do it. No, we're gonna. I've never done it before, but I think this could be the year.
You actually want to do it?
I mean, semen. Salty semen, fresh off the boat. They do flood into Castro now, which I think is a nice indication that the military is actually woke now. It's safe to be a gay or lesbian service member. Sorry, trans folks, you're out. But certainly, they come in full military uniform to the Castro, which deeply troubling, but I mean everyone else does too. The cops and pride, now the Fleet Week military.
I enjoy that they wear their uniforms. It tells me exactly who not to fuck at the bar.
Yes, it is a kind of quick and easy visual guide to smash or pass, really.
And clearly, I don't think all workers who are ushered into working for the military are bad people, because I know many do it for economic reasons, but in this case, when you're doing deliberate pageantry to build up support for U.S. empire in the military, probably not going to have sex with you. I'm probably not going to give you the time of day. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, yeah, I look forward to our tour of ships revealing more about the. I want to know whether they're allowed to not wear the uniforms, for example, because if they're under orders, then
they probably
maybe
get
you're
free
more
drinks.
sympathetic.
They probably get like free drinks. They probably get a ton of sex from it. Cause,
Yeah, no, you're required to fuck them while saying thank you for your service.
Yeah, with their dick in your mouth. They're like, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll provide live updates on our tour of seamen and their seminal vessels.
But also, Navy seamen are like the least sexy military members. Like, if you're
I beg to differ.
If you're gonna fuck anyone, I want to fuck like the big, strong, like people on the battleground. Like, I want someone.
Oh, you
who's
want
gonna,
some roughnecks, some frontline cannon fodder, rough.
I mean, I'm not gonna fuck any of them, but like, if
trade.
I was, I want like the dumbest, roughest, masculine, like military daddies.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked. So yeah, I mean, well, wait. If you want the military daddies, they're in the bunker, 7,000 miles away.
That's true.
Pressing the button on the drone, ordering the kid to press the button on the drone.
They don't need to be daddies. They just need to be like able to pick me up, which isn't that hard.
Right. So but I mean, in that case, right, they're from the inner cities and 18 years old with no economic prospects. So I think you might be exploiting them. I know who's the exploiter in this relationship.
But honestly, I would never do that because I have morality. And
that's praxis.
Yeah. But I mean, this kind of touches on the greater theme of how so often when countries we despise have military pageantry. I mean, China just had like their National Day military parade. Korea does their parades.
Yeah, it's so weird when Russia wheels their missiles through Red Square, right? That's bizarre. They must be insane people.
But everyone does it. Like the U.S. If go to like football games, sports arenas, the Olympics. I mean, pageantry is there all the time. The U.S. military and Pentagon have a budget just for military pageantry at the NFL.
But isn't that kind of I kind of, as I say, I love this. I'm saying that there's something so kind of effete and effeminate about all this, like, oh look, our pretty little high-tech jet is doing fancy loop-de-loops while spewing out colorful smoke. It's so fey and wonderful. So I'm suggesting the entire $840 billion a year budget of the military gets redirected to only this. That's all it does from now on. Just imagine just how great a sort of air show or we could do the like the pictures they hold up of Kim Jong Un with his they're made of the faces. They'll hold little signs and flip them over and stuff. Let's get our army boys doing that. Like I think that'd be an army you could be proud of.
I would love the U.S. military to hold up pictures of Kim Jong Un in our military processions. Think of how fucking funny that would be.
Yeah, it's basically going to turn into sort of aerobatic aerial displays and color guard. Basically, like that's what we should spend $840 billion a year on.
It makes
I think
it
it'd be great.
instantly more fuckable, and that's really what matters in this.
Then would smash totally. Yeah, that'd be great.
Exactly.
They'd have nice biceps from like twirling the flags and stuff. That'd look great.
But getting to things that really matter, the Netflix show Big Mouth had a big controversy over how they define pansexuality and bisexuality in their new season.
They did it wrong.
So I watched it. I know.
Yeah, I'm mad because I didn't.
I
like the show. I haven't caught up yet. Yeah. So please enlighten us. And wait. Let me give the disclaimer. Spoiler alert. If you, like me, say haven't seen this episode of Big Mouth yet, I've seen the clip, but then you might want to just drop out for the next 30 seconds or so while Sam spoils the episode.
You're welcome. So basically, they have a new girl who comes to their school, and she comes out as pansexual in her introduction, which all middle schoolers do. I mean, that's what I did. I came out as...
Yeah, it's relatable content.
That was one of the few things I mentioned. But no, she describes it as, I like tacos, and I like hot dogs. Burritos, I'm sorry. Whatever. You have the picture. But
don't trust vegans to sample sort of meat-based foods here. It's no memory for it whatsoever.
I can have tacos and burritos, bitch. But sometimes, she said, sometimes I want taco turning into a burrito, or I want
A burrito
that
was
identifies as a
started
taco.
as a taco or something, and
So
then
basically,
and anything else that's on the menu.
the controversy was over this definition of, bisexuality, or the insinuation that bisexuality doesn't include trans people, but instead the politically correct definition of bisexuality is liking only two genders, and then pansexual is liking every gender.
Right. So the controversy that played out, right, was between bi folks that felt that this was essentially engaging a kind of bi erasure or a mischaracterization as bisexuals as being trans exclusionary somehow.
Yeah.
Plenty of people were saying loudly, like, no, I as a bisexual am trans inclusive, as everyone should be, right? I consider trans women to be women, and trans men to be men, and therefore these are genders I enjoy sexual relations with. The other part with them was sort of some pansexual people feeling like they were being mischaracterized as biphobic, or that their position was sort of inherently set up in opposition to bisexuality.
Yeah.
And then there was a few, I think, trans people who probably rightly suggested that it wasn't the wokest presentation of gender. Keeping in mind that it is a sort of animated cartoon that is a comedy show.
Going for puberty.
I think it's always important in these discussions to remember that, like, this was a character saying this stuff, right? It did take on a slightly sort of authoritative, educating tone.
Yeah.
But it also was a character that is meant to be a child saying something, and in a tone that was all, like, a little bit sort of smug and like a bratty kid, right? I mean, so to the extent that I feel like people in their search for or perhaps in the prosecution of like the narcissism of small differences, right? Where like these are communities that are actually often intersecting and overlapping.
Yeah.
There are plenty of trans bi people. There are plenty of bi people who are happy to be interchangeably referred to as pansexual. There's it's easy to forget, like, this is a character in a comedy show giving a description that might not reflect your reality.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
And I think from my experience, I've met a few pansexual people, and they've actually argued against each other's definitions. So I don't think it's actually that surprising that someone who's producing this, who actually apologized for the way they portrayed it, but like, if there's not a uniform decision, like, of what this means, of course you're going to have confusion and differentiations between what pansexuality is. I mean, for me, I've heard people say, exactly what the character said, but also like, it's just hearts over parts, which other pansexual people have actually said that's not the correct definition. So it kind of just plays into this whole focus on identitarianism and, like, aesthetics of what your identity is versus, like, just doing what makes you happy. I mean, if you're more focused about what your label means versus, like, what you per se, like, enjoying doing, I think you have the wrong focus of this issue. I mean,
well, it's also there. I think the part of it for me that felt a little bit, I don't know, like, off-putting was the gatekeeping between the people who felt like your definition of what pansexuality or bisexuality means to you is invalid. There is one true correct definition, and you are not, people saying you are not actually correctly pan if you don't think this big mouth bit, which lasted all of about 30 seconds, was, if you don't think it's problematic and worthy of canceling or whatever. It just felt like these are sort of micro gradations of a community, right, where people have radically different experiences and come to this in very different ways, and so you are just going to meet people who, they're understanding these terms, and what it means to them personally is going to be different.
I mean, sexuality is so personal. I mean, more often than not, I feel like these terms we adapt for what our sexual orientation is are for others, not for us. I mean,
your sexuality is for you and whichever military platoon of the U.S. Marines you choose to share it with.
Like, I only
on a
use
given
the term
night.
Like gay because that's like the best descriptor for other people. Like, otherwise I just would rather not put a label onto anything, because in many ways it's limiting for any individual what you want to do. Like, if for many gay men, they have sex with a girl, like, oh, you're going back to being straight, but they're just expressing their sexuality. Like, that's not.
Yes, if you look upon a vagina, you're actually just going back into the closet. That's how that works. Keep those strict ontological categories, sort of essentials first.
Yeah,
you must not violate these ontological categories at all with your behavior. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to believe that the people who thought that the big mouth bit was upsetting, I can believe they're sincere, and therefore, whatever. If you were upset by it, great, sound off on Twitter and enjoy. But to the extent that
I think a lot of it was concerned trolling, though. To be honest,
it did feel like somebody else might be offended by it, not that they were individually actually personally hurt by it.
I think if you actually watch the full episode and you get the full context, it makes. I think it's a better portrayal, because in the same episode, Jay, who comes out as bisexual, who's a boy in this episode, it kind of shows the differentiations between boys who express same gender sexuality versus like a girl who says she's also attracted to women, and how one's broadly accepted, often due to it being like sexy, like, ooh, a girl likes another girl, hot. But when the guy does it, all the men were like, oh, I'm not really comfortable around this. So I think in that way it actually shows like the reality of the world, like
the male gaze.
More often than not, I think it's girls are easier to come out as bisexual, while guys are either like viewed as like, oh, you're just gay in the closet, or you're gross, and they're often just pushed into heteronormative relationships because it's just easier for them.
Right. I mean, I would say, speaking purely from personal experience, I've seen biphobia play out within gay male communities. I don't think I've seen panphobia play out, but I think it's just because it probably just doesn't come up as often.
Yeah.
And generally, I think if you're locked into any kind of pan community that's not extremely online, there's probably just a higher degree of understanding of like the many shades of meaning that encapsulates for different people. So,
and I think it's really confusing. I mean, we can touch on another pop cultural thing that kind of went on the same time as the Big Mouth incident. One of probably the most famous YouTubers, Trisha Paytas, she's basically a daily vlogger, came out as transgender, and a lot of her statements about her gender identity and stuff, which many people accused her of being disingenuous and just doing it for the likes. I mean,
the top comment I think was like, when your video hasn't hit 1 million views in a while and you're getting desperate, which felt true.
It could be true, but also she could be honest. I mean, I don't want to dismiss her as being just crazy, because what if she's telling the truth, and that's even more problematic for her psyche. I mean,
well, just to be clarified, just before we come off as incredibly callous to, because we started this with she came out as trans, and I think that would involve misgendering. She came out as a gay man. Is the claim,
but she also
for reasons that came off as incredibly shallow and kind of offensive in some way. And I use that term lightly. I just mean it felt all a bit icky.
But I don't think she was coming from a place of wanting to be icky. I just think it's so complex, the differentiations between gender, sex, and gender identity. So I mean, not identity, gender expression. Sorry. So I feel like a lot of the things she referred to were focused on gender expression rather than gender identity, which she could have both. She could be trans, but also many of the attributes she was focused on were like, oh, personality traits and having short hair and not wanting to care about appearance.
Like, I don't put on makeup some days, therefore I'm a gay man is pretty like... I mean, silly is overstating the case, because it's not. That's actually, that could be a perfectly valid way of feeling for some people. But in her expression of it, right, it felt like it felt a little cheap, and it also felt disingenuous. I think because it was specifically around like, I don't. It's not that she was never claiming to be a trans man, which would be a complete valid claim to make, right? If she was in fact trans. And I think we would be gleefully using whatever pronouns were sort of chosen or offered there. But this was not any of that. It was I express these while still essentially being a cis woman, identify with these certain gender expression qualifiers, right, or signifiers, and therefore that makes me a gay man. It's sort of a cheap stereotype of gay men, for one.
I mean, I have a few of her problematic statements.
Oh, please.
She says, I identify as a boy because I don't like to be the center of attention. I mean, that's not
so fuck you.
And also, we also have, I'm a gay man because I hate over masculine energy. And so,
I can relate.
Being gay means you're effeminate, which is also a meaningless construct in the grand scheme of things.
Well, it certainly doesn't imply anything about male or female gender, right? I mean, you can be an effeminate man, and that's a totally valid expression of masculinity.
Or I'm transgender because I loved having short hair.
Cool.
But she also goes on and says that basically, in a clapback to someone criticizing her, which is why I don't think it's completely disingenuous. I think she's very just confused about the grand scheme of what being transgender means. I mean, she never talks about a dysphoria with her appearance. Because if so, I mean, wouldn't she want to change her appearance once she came out? I mean, I don't know. I'm not trans, so I have no idea. But from my knowledge, from people I've engaged with who are trans, that's often one of the things you would normally do is you would try to look a certain way.
I think you might be if you were going to risk any actual being ostracized in any way, or if you were going to risk returned to some kind of state of oppression, you would hopefully be doing it for reasons that were a little more interesting than like hair and makeup preferences that are expressed as a sometimes thing. Because you have to remember, a lot of her presentation during the video in which this was being spelled out was actually sort of very feminine. So she is known for this. And yet again, if she were a trans man and chose to present incredibly classically feminine, that would be fine too. But that was not the discussion that was going on.
No.
So I will apologize very quickly if we turn out to be kind of wrong in this one. But it all felt pretty disingenuous to me.
For me, my focus is more the way she describes what's the proper way to be male or female. I mean, she does say in one of her tweets to a person calling her out, men can wear dresses, heels, and makeup, you know. So, I mean, that's true. Like,
absolutely true.
Like, there's not a right or wrong way to be male or female. I mean...
Or to be non-binary, if you wish.
You know, I know. Like, she reaffirms a lot of those stereotypes in her discussion, and it ends with, you can be any gender you want, whatever day you want. You can be all the letters in the alphabet, or just a few of them, or none of them. And to me, that doesn't make any sense if you understand any conception of what these labels mean. I mean, you can't be like a lesbian and a gay man. Like, it doesn't. It's not a way. Like,
given that these are pretty carefully defined categories that are useful shorthand for as we've been talking about, right? Like much more complex sets of behaviors and expressions and things, which need not you need not import all of it, right? Just because you say identify as a lesbian doesn't mean it has to actually preclude a bunch of things, or doesn't need to imply certain stereotypes or whatever. Or maybe it can. That's fine too.
Yeah.
But to the extent that kind of saying you can be anything you want is like, well, yes, that's vacuously true.
Yeah.
But also, that's where the like conservative attack helicopter pronoun memes kind of come from, right? Yeah. It's like, well, if you can be anything, I can be an attack helicopter.
But also, it kind of just plays into like this whole neoliberal identity politics. I mean, you can choose whatever you want to be. It's this idea of you choose...
It's a free market of identities to choose from.
I mean, not to, like, hate on anyone, but I think there's a certain worrying conception when we have exponential genders and identities and sexual orientations, because sooner or later it just means it's only you as an individual have that certain thing, which I think is true, but we don't need a word for every single one.
That's kind of the perfect neoliberal invention, isn't it? Is a personal brand that is yours and yours alone.
It's taking an idea that you have your own personal like gender and sexual orientation and gender expression, but conscribing it onto a branding term, which I think is highly problematic, because you're just not going to have everyone understand. I mean, it's already so complex, people who actually in a community. Why can't you just be happy with just saying, oh, this is me and this is what I like? Like, I don't need to slap a label on everything.
Well, and that kind of massively individualized conception of gender or sexuality is solidarity breaking. That's the whole point, right? I mean, I've always said I am politically gay.
Yeah.
As in, there's some fuzziness around the edges of all those terms, right? But like, for me, the idea that there's solidarity with the cause of other gay men as I was growing up and coming out and stuff actually provided me a lot of comfort, and I was able to find a community which was supportive, and together we could band together in some sort of common interest. And that's the point of solidarity, right? You actually don't have to agree on everything. You just need to have a common cause. To the extent that if you're reducing all gender expression, particularly given that that's where so much of the fight is these days, right, is around gender identities and gender expression, and you're engaging it in the only kind of thing that could be sort of just completely counter to solidarity, or forming any groups of solidarity that could take power, defend people from the kinds of bullshit Supreme Court challenges going on or whatever, you at some point have to choose what group you want to form solidarity bonds with. There's
also the sense of entitlement, which I don't mean to be like rude, because I mean
to be rude, Sam. Yeah. So you say it and I'll take credit for it.
There's the entitlement that everyone must understand this new conception, even though most people in the world have never met anyone. I've met, I think, one or two non-binary people ever, and it wasn't until college. But, like, my family has no idea what that means. And, like, they're pretty, like, socially progressive, but they have no idea. But too often we crack down on anyone who doesn't understand that concept. And it's like gay people had to educate. Like, the fact you just want to ignore the education aspect if you want that to be accepted in cultural society, it's just kind of lazy. And, like, every other group's had to do it. So I don't get why you can think you can just get around it.
Wow. Are you demanding free emotional labor from marginalized people?
That's true.
I mean, it turns out that the reason it's called a struggle is because there's some fucking struggle involved.
Like, the reason, the reason gay people got so accepted is because we had to educate through media, and people had to come out, which is dangerous. It makes people more likely to accept the gay community. More people came out, more media representation allowed more people to be willing to accept the gay community. If you don't do the labor, you're not going to get that progress. Like, it's horrible practice if you think, oh, you should read all the gender theory, and if you don't and say anything, you're a bigot and I hate you. Like,
there's gonna be missteps over and over again, right? And so to the extent that even thinking about the big mouth controversy here, right, this is a show that with a kind of pretty well-intentioned and clear-eyed idea went in to try and present a sympathetic pansexual character on a mainstream comedy show. Did they get it 100% right? Probably not, but it turns out that's kind of important still. Like, there's going to be missteps, and so I do hope people kind of assume some good intentions for some of this stuff, right? But anyway.
It's a struggle. If it was easy, we'd already have it.
So in other struggles, I hear some shit's shaking up in northern Syria, Sam.
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening?
Well, Trump has said he is going to withdraw troops in the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria, which was formerly known as Rojava. It's a Kurdish highly occupied area in northern Syria. And basically, he's giving the go-ahead for Turkey to invade that region, just like what happened to the city of Afrin, which was a massacre. People died all over. It's called the Spring of Peace Operation, which sounds lovely, but it's really going to cause, like, the deaths of thousands of Kurdish, not just Kurdish people. Northern Syria also has a lot of Assyrians, Chechens, Armenians, Arabs.
I mean, this has been the primary site of contention and sort of fragmentation within the Syrian civil war, right? I mean,
Well,
sort of
primarily with Turkey.
yeah. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
between, but I mean, even all of sort of northern Syria writ large, right, has fragmented into all these weird micro splinter groups, and
Yeah.
Obviously, ISIS had a sort of control of a significant portion of that, got sort of beaten back by largely the YPG, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Kurdish
Yeah, which is
sort of the military arm.
Yeah, which is the main, like, backer of the Syrian Defense Forces, which is kind of what is at threat due to this current declaration on Twitter by Donald Trump.
I think it's very easy to feel deeply underqualified on Syria just because
it's extremely
it's been going on
complex.
forever, right?
It's been going on since officially the war started in 2012, the Civil War. It basically originated, well, roots probably trace back to the Arab Spring, but major protests against the Assad government in Syria led to many Syrian troops withdrawing and forming the Free Syrian Army, which started the whole civil war and then became a proxy war once the U.S., Gulf states, Turkey, and Russia and Iran got involved. And basically Syria is just a giant battleground for global hegemony.
See, so I feel like one needs to really keep up with these things to impress your sugar daddy. That's the twink guide to geopolitics involves making sure you know enough about this stuff that you can sort of hold breakfast conversation. This is our gift to you.
Yeah, that's why I do it.
But in terms of knowing enough to hold breakfast conversation, girl boss Ilhan Omar was sounding off about this.
No,
and you weren't very happy.
I was not happy. She's basically adopted neocon rhetoric around this whole issue, and
a Democratic Congresswoman adopting neocon rhetoric? That never happens.
Yeah. I actually expected better from her.
She's usually pretty good. I don't know.
She was pretty good on things like Venezuela and stuff, which almost everyone was horrible at. Just trying to find the tweet. Oh, here it is. She says, Trump's move will not put an end to endless wars. What it will do is reward Russia, Iran, and ISIS. He's not leading us toward peace. He's showing the world that his political interests are more important than reliable leadership and keeping our commitments to our allies. And what I found exceptionally troubling about her tweet is she blames it on rewarding Russia and Iran and Salafi jihadist groups like ISIS, but she never mentions Turkey. And the whole thing is giving Turkey the go-ahead to invade, for one, a sovereign nation, which is Syria, but also to target a group they've historically, ethnically cleansed and genocided, which is the Kurdish population.
Right. I mean, so to the extent that the Kurds, right, have been stateless pretty much for modern history.
Yeah.
And there's 40 million Kurds spread out between this part of northern Syria and then Iraq and Turkey.
Yeah, around 10% of Syria is estimated to be Kurdish, which is the second largest ethnic group in all of Syria.
And the Kurds are the largest ethnic group without a state in the world.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, the bonds of unity between, say, Iraqi Kurds and Syrian Kurds is not all that. I mean, they're not exactly one monolithic.
If anything, the Iraqi Kurds have served geopolitical interest and disadvantage the Syrian Kurds.
They were sort of used in various proxy wars in Iraq and Kuwait.
Oh, for sure. So, but this kind of just brings to light that the Dems also will just spout out neocon rhetoric if it means clapping back at Donald Trump. And also just the fact they're really utilizing this group that is marginalized in basically every country it's occupying, or not occupying, but living in, whether it's Syria, Turkey, Iran, or probably even Iraq today. I'm not sure about the situation in Iraq right now because it's just changed so much.
Iraqi Kurdistan, I think, is actually quite politically stable these days. It's kind of considered like the nice bit of Iraq you might want to visit.
Yeah. But the reality is we just utilize them for this proxy war because they're a troop base that doesn't require U.S. troops to be massacred. But in the end, we're willing to sacrifice them and let them be ethnically cleansed by NATO allies like Turkey, who, for one, have a major history of cracking down on Kurdish independence. I mean, the PKK, which is the Kurdish Workers' Party, it's like a Marxist-Leninist party run by the marginalized Kurds who basically couldn't speak their language, couldn't use Kurdish names. Like, their whole culture was basically illegal. We're being, well, for one, they're considered a terrorist group in the country, but also
the U.S. designated them a terrorist group too,
the
right?
U.S., France, the U.K., but the international body as a whole does not view them as a terrorist group. And it kind of just gets even more troubling when just recently, a few weeks ago, 4 Kurdish elected officials in municipalities were ousted for alleged connections to terrorist groups, which is the leftist party of Turkey, and was removed. So this whole thing is just continuing the legacy of Kurdish ethnic cleansing across the Middle East. And Syria and Turkey have had a really interesting legacy together. Syria actually backed the PKK and made Turkey have high resentment, and once the war restarted in Syria, their relations have been very tense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot more developing there.
Yeah.
But for now, we have to say goodbye. The only thing to mention is next Tuesday is the next Democratic debate.
Yes.
And we're not sure we're going to do it, but like check our Twitter at TwinkRev or Instagram, TwinkRev, or find us on Facebook as Twink Revolution. And we will hopefully have something for you. We're going to maybe try and get some friends together, and we're going to get obnoxiously intoxicated and try to, shout at the television while the Democratic debate plays. So we'll keep you posted. In the meantime, please speculate on our allegiances to Bashar al-Assad.
Yeah.
As we've clearly revealed our
we love you, comrade. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.